Hey Karen, how are you going?
I'm great. Thanks, Polly.
Yeah, good. So I've got Karen Yates, special guest today, and she's got an amazing, inspiring story. So we're going to get into it very soon. But I like to always start off with Karen. Please introduce yourself and what do you do?
All right. Thank you so much, Polly, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. So my name's Karen Yates. I am married, mother of two kids, and I currently travel the world. We are a full-time traveling family. We have no home base. We go where the desire takes us, I guess you'd say.
Mm.
And my husband and I both work as financial alignment coaches.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now that's very it's a very kind of sounds like a nomadic lifestyle that you've got, and plus family doing that kind of adventure. So I'd love to dig into your story. So where did this all start? How did this idea come about to become, the family that travels?
Right. So this was a very, very big shift for us. I grew up in a very, very traditional family, where the path was you go to school, you get good grades, you get a good job, you get married, you have kids, you work, 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 and then you retire. And that's the path that you're on. And I was on that path for a long time, 18 years. I worked as a pharmaceutical research chemist and ups and downs of losing my job through big pharma, all of that. But 2018 found my husband and I at just a really, really low point in our marriage. And to top it off, we were broke. And there were several reasons that went into that.
Mm.
Uh, Unfortunate happenstances and occurrences, job losses, and lots of things that contributed to that. But we looked at each other and we said, man, we have to do something differently because we aren't, we're not living a life that we enjoy. We're not happy where we are in our relationship. We're certainly not happy where we are with our finances. And we need to change something or we're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So we really started talking, just deep, heartfelt, emotional discussions. And the more we did this, the more we realized that we really wanted the same thing out of life. Our big main goal was to spend more time with each other and to spend more time with our two kids. And given the confines of my job, it was a very demanding job. Most people say 9 to 5, but this was, 7 to 5 kind of job. I didn't even see my kids in the morning. My husband would get them off to school and, I'd see them for a couple hours in the evening. And that included, making dinner, eating dinner, cleaning up, bedtime routines, all of that. But there's hardly any time. And, my job was not flexible. I couldn't go in and say, you know what, can you just give me some more vacation time? It wasn't going to happen. And
Yeah.
so we started thinking kind of creatively. And there was a lot going on with my husband at this time as well. He was looking for work. So he had applied for an internship with someone that he had been following online. And it was a it was a pretty strenuous interview process. Comes down to it, he got selected as one of 10 people and then realized that the internship was actually in Thailand. He needed to be in Thailand for 2 months. And so we were in the US. So thinking about going to Thailand, I mean, that's literally halfway around the world.
Yeah.
And we looked at each other and we're like, this is not going to work. We don't have money. How in the world are we going to support him living in another country? How is he even going to get over there? This is not going to work.
Karen, give us a bit of insight into the situation that you were in, because you mentioned about being like broke. Now, like that could mean a lot of different things to people. And especially when you've got two kids and, your husband as well. What did broke mean for you guys? What did it look like?
Okay, so broke meant that I had a job, I had income coming in, but we had recently moved. So less than a year before this point, we had moved and lost money on the house that we had. We were renting. And the other thing that had happened is we had done a real estate flip.
Okay.
Purchased a house that was in disrepair, fixed it up with the idea that we were going to make quite a bit of money from it.
Mhm.
Well, instead of a flip, it became quite the flop that was very, very damaging to our finances. And so when I say we were broke, our bank account was about at zero. Money would come in and money would go out. And, we were trying to pay off this the debt from our flop, and just struggling to really get any kind of foothold and with our finances, to have any kind of money, any kind of real money available.
Mm. And being in that situation, like there's one thing to be in the relationship with your husband and knowing, what kind of financial debt or depth, as depth that you were in. How do you think, like, how do you manage that, and how do you think that that would have affected, I guess, family life, your kids, and all of that?
It was definitely there. I mean, we had our own issues. My husband and I had our own issues, personally. And then you add to that the stress of the money and not having the money. And there was just a lot of tension. And so, even though our younger one was about 6 at the time, you can definitely feel it. There's tension in the air. Things are not, cohesive. There's not just this feeling of family love going around all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it definitely affected a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, were they aware of, how transparent were they? Obviously they were young kids, but were they aware of, like, that mom and dad were having trouble with finances, or that, was it affecting them in their life?
We tried to keep that, fairly private from them, just so that that wasn't an added stress, on small children. I'm sure
Yeah.
they were aware of it on some level, but we weren't openly talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So it's very much husband and wife sort of trying to deal with this situation.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then sort of what happened next?
Okay, so my husband had applied for this internship, gotten accepted, and we're like, oh my gosh, he can't go to Thailand, right? There's like so many reasons why he can't. He gets the kids off to school in the morning, he's there when they get home, all this stuff. And the first thing he did was look at flight tickets to Thailand. And he was shocked because, we were expecting a couple $1,000s, and that just would have shut it down right then. But he was able to find a flight for just over $300 US round trip from the US to Thailand. And we were like, wow, that's insanely low. Like, we could actually do this. And so that led us to dig into more, like, how do we make it work so that, I can still go to work and the kids get taken care of. And we started figuring it out. And so we did, we figured it out, and he's ready to go to Thailand. And right before he leaves to go to Thailand, he asked me this question, and he does it very intentionally. And he says, what would you think of just leaving all of this and moving to Thailand?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
I
a
paused.
big move, considering, I mean, first of all, there's like $0 in the cash account. And then there's just thinking, like, logically, even to buy the airfare ticket, like, would you have to maybe just get it from the loan, or sort of to be able to borrow that? It's a small amount, but it's still, for someone who has $0.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when he said that, he was not intending it to happen, right now. He was just like, sometime, in the future, in the next couple of years, what would you think about doing this? And I just stopped and I was like, ooh, that's kind of a big move. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with this. And so I told him, I said, very honestly, I said, it kind of scares the crap out of me. And he's like, okay, all right. And he left it at that. And I went to work the next day, and my mind is just churning with this question. And all these amazing thoughts just start coming through my head about what would it be like to leave the US, to leave our structured life, our narrow path that we've been following, and do something completely different. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon, like, that's all I'm thinking about at work, which is not really a good thing when you're a chemist, because, there's dangerous things you're working with.
And were you always quite, I mean, in your heart, or like in your background, were you always quite an adventurous person, or was this is like a completely new adventure in itself?
This was pretty big out of the box for me. Pretty big, breaking down the walls. Like, I say I was following the structured path, and I really was. That was my goal. It's what I had been indoctrinated with since I was, a baby. Like, I knew I was going to go to college and get a job. And, this was the path that was laid out. And I knew that was the path that I was going to follow. And so, I had adventurous spirit and, I'd go on a zip line or something, but not adventurous spirit such that I'd, ditch my career and go do something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So then what
yeah.
happened? Like, so how was this process in terms of from when he planted the seed and you were like thinking about it and, churning and all of that? And then how did you sort of move through that process?
Right. So he left for Thailand shortly thereafter. A day or two later, he left for Thailand, and we still stayed in communication. We were still talking a lot, every night for me, morning for him. We'd find some time where we could connect and talk, and we kept talking about it. And pretty soon it transitioned for us from moving to Thailand to full-time travel. And I think it was really that just became more attractive. It was something that we'd always wanted to do, and we thought we'd do it in retirement. And, when I stop and think about it now, it's like, wow, it's just so different, because in our mind in retirement, it's like, oh, you might take one or two trips a year. And, maybe a big trip would be a month spent in Europe, traveling around Europe, and then you go back home.
Okay.
Right. And that was kind of our
Yeah.
idea of what, travel in retirement would look like. And we did have concerns that, one, are we going to have the finances to do what we want to do when we retire? And two, are we going to be in good enough health to actually do the things that we'd want to do while we're traveling?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're really pretty much bringing this forward rather than waiting for the retirement.
Absolutely.
Sort of this was the opportunity. What were the considerations that because he went and then you were here, the kids were here as well?
Yes.
Okay. So what were the considerations for you in order to reunite with him and really just sort of pack up and leave? Like,
so he came back after 2 months, and we were still in the discussion phase. So we still hadn't committed to this. We're looking at it. We're really liking it, but there was a lot of discussions that went into this. This was not an easy decision by any means, and we still had a lot to figure out. I mean, we didn't have the money thing figured out yet. He'd gone for this internship and was learning, an idea of a way to make money online, but it wasn't like we were making up my salary or anything, with his online work. And so there was a lot of considerations to come into that. And I don't know, we just kept talking about it. And the more we talked about it, the more the benefits outweighed the negatives. The pros were just stacking up, and the cons, we just kept addressing them. Every time something would come up, we'd be like, okay, well, what about this? How do we visit family? What about connection with the grandparents?
mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, we talked about it. I said, well, we really see them about once or maybe twice a year as it is now. We lived in Kansas. One set of grandparents was in Las Vegas and the other was in Michigan. So there's a long distance between. And so we didn't see them very frequently. And we're like, well, we can still come back to the States and see them, once a year. It doesn't have to be, this, you leave and you're gone forever.
Mm.
And, with the technology now, video calls are so easy. And, we'll just use technology to our advantage here.
Mm. What was the response like when you announced to people that you're making this move or moving the whole family to Thailand?
Right. So we had transitioned to full-time travel by the time we were telling people. And we kept it to ourselves for a long time. I'll admit, we shared it with our kids one at a time. Our son was 12 at the time. And so we introduced it to him before our 6-year-old, thinking, okay, 6 to 9 months is like forever to a 6-year-old. I mean, that's like, half their life, it seems like, right? So, we had introduced it, told our kids, but then we were like, oh man, we just we really want to make sure that this is what we're doing. And two, that we're really, really confident about this. We don't want to be telling our parents that, oh, hey, we're thinking of doing this. And then, get them all with their thoughts and then come back a month later and say, oh yeah, we're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was important to us to be at that point, in our relationship with each other, as well as, everything else being lined up, that yes, this is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we did tell our parents first, and then we told immediate family. And we really waited on friends and coworkers until much later, because like you can't be telling coworkers until you've told your boss that you're actually leaving.
So, okay. So you were already doing the traveling, like you were in your job, um, and you were already doing like the world traveling or going back and forth to sort of, or how did that work?
No, we were still very much based in Kansas at that point. We were
Right.
still renting a place, just living our normal life still, but getting things lined up so that, the finances were taken care of so that we could actually do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Um, I'm really curious as well about, I mean, if your children are like 6 to 12 at that stage,
mhm.
what comes to mind is like they'd be in school, they'd have friends and they'd have sort of some certainty within their development as well. And I could see that being a concern for people. Like if, when they're really young, it's like, okay, we'll just take them anywhere and, we pop them there and they'll
Right.
adapt. But that's something that would come up, I think, in terms of, how do you make that decision about kids schooling and like moving them around the world or moving to a new location?
Right. So that was actually one of the biggest benefits, because both of our kids had been in public school. And I mean, my mom was a public school teacher, and I think the public school system is wonderful, but they try to put kids in a box. And if your child doesn't fit within the box, they don't have the resources. They're not funded to have the resources to really handle that, to deal with someone who doesn't fit within this little average box. And so we were like, man, if we take them out of school, we actually get to have control over what they're learning, what pace they're learning at. We have much more input into their learning than we do by sending them to public school.
Mm-hmm.
And
How
one
would
of the
that
big
work? As in, like, I don't really even know how people, are able to, is it like some kind of tutor, or like, how do you have that flexible learning environment?
Right. So there's all kinds of things. And I'll admit, Pauline, that I didn't know this when we started looking
Yeah.
into this. And I was kind of scared. I'm like, oh, wow, we're going to be homeschooling. Or, I've learned the term world schooling now, which really applies to people who kind of do travel about. And I was like, man, I know that people homeschool. I've definitely been aware of that, but I'm like, they have all these resources, right? They have the public library that they can go to, and they have groups that they meet up with, and the kids have interactions and all of that. And so this was definitely a concern. And one of the things that was really beneficial to us is, while my husband was in Thailand, he learned that there's summits for virtually everything, right? There's digital nomad summits, there's drop shipping summits, there's summits for everything. And he was like, well, what about families that travel? So we Googled it. And sure enough, up pops this family adventure summit. And, they had this wonderful video and what they do. And there was one coming up in October of that following year of 2019. And that actually ended up setting our deadline for when we were going to leave, because we were like, we are going to be at this family summit because it looks amazing. And we knew that they talked about homeschooling. And so we were like, okay, we're gonna like just go with this one. We're gonna go on this path, and we're gonna worry about the homeschooling later. There's a few things that we have to get lined up first. And
Yeah.
so we'll be really concerned about, getting all the finances, getting rid of all of our stuff and all this. And we know that we will be addressing the homeschooling and learning more. And so we went to the summit, and one of the women there just really put me at ease by saying that, as a parent, you are the one who is most concerned with your child's education. You are the one who is best suited to make those decisions for your child's education. And I was just like, oh, this weight just got lifted off me. And
I
she
mean,
had
coming
all
from
kinds.
you, because like you're someone who's come from a very structured um upbringing,
Yes.
and to be able to even consider that you will have more flexibility with your child's learning, that's like, yeah, that's a huge shift.
Yes. And so this woman had, I mean, she had homeschooled her children for from birth through college, basically. I mean, they went to college, they went to university on their own. And so she had all of these resources, and she's like, you can it's basically, it's an open book, then you can choose how you want to do things. And so it just gave us so much more comfort in it. And so we started investigating, some online learning platforms, and, just finding ways to supplement education. And so we were able to find some courses online. And then the fun thing is that we've really been able to customize their education based on what their interests are. So we hit the core components. They get the math, the English, and the science. The social studies we don't worry about so much. We're traveling; they experience lots of culture. So we don't push that one so much. But what are their interests? So our son is this. I mean, the only way to put it is a computer nerd. He just digs programming, and I don't understand it. It's not my language, but he loves it. And so it's like, okay, we start looking around, and it's like, oh, there's some Harvard University classes that you can take online for computer science. So we enrolled him as a 13-year-old in a Harvard computer science course. And
Wow.
it was
That's
difficult for him.
awesome. Yeah.
I know.
I love that you're really taken, I guess, that really allowing them to like assessing, I guess, where they are at, what their interests are, and really leading them with whatever it is that their strengths or their interests in their own education.
Yes, absolutely. So he's taken a couple of coding classes. He actually put together like a coding course for kids to teach other kids how to do it, and he's just really blossomed with that. And it's like, this is wonderful. Now, our daughter is much more into art. And so we've done online art classes with her. She's taken Zoom lessons from her grandma. And yeah, we find courses that she can do, and she just loves that. So it's like, we can encourage her to enjoy that. She does all of her schoolwork as well, but we have the time and the flexibility to really let each of our kids pursue their passions, what they really, really enjoy in life.
What about for the parents out there who might feel like, obviously we've gone through this pandemic, and there's a lot of homeschooling that's going on, which is a very new thing for a lot of parents as well. And it can be very stressful in terms of, them feeling like they have to be not only working, but switched on for their, to support their kids in their homeschooling and getting them up and about and motivating them and all of that. In terms of your experience and, enrolling them into online and all those opportunities, when you say time, do you have more flexibility in terms of supporting your children in their education as well? Or do you feel like you have to spend a lot of time with them?
So I'll admit we're very blessed. Both of our children are self-learners. And so we can kind of, put a framework together, and they're able to really learn much of it on their own. So we don't have to put on the teacher hat all the time. Now, I will say with our son, we have to put on the motivator hat much more frequently. He's 14. It's like, yes, we need to, we still need to do some schoolwork here. But the neat thing is the time that's not wasted in school. So, I mean, I went through public education. So, I can look back and I can say, what, half the time I was bored out of my mind. Or, I'm waiting for the teacher to stop yelling at the student who's having disciplinary issues. Or I'm, they're reviewing things for the 13th time. And I'm like, get on with it already. We just cut all of that out. And
Plus
so
the breaks as well, right? Like when they have the mandatory breaks.
Right. And it just flows, and it just becomes so much more flexible that it really, really works. And so for us, we try to schedule their mornings so that they're kind of getting their really core components of their schoolwork done in the mornings, which gives us the time to really focus on our business. But at the same time, they know that we don't want them ever to feel stuck. So, if they're, if our son's doing geometry and I don't understand something, okay, you come and you interrupt, and, one of us helps them. And, the same with our daughter. We don't want either one of them to feel frustrated or upset about schoolwork. So they know that they can interrupt us, and we switch on our teacher hat and we sit down with them. But we don't find that we have to do that frequently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a bit of insight for anyone who's, curious about the parenting side of things and education. I want to take you back to that decision. So this move that you were considering, when you talk about the financial, that's a big thing that you've mentioned a few times. That plan, I mean, because you were initially on the single income source from you and your job.
Right.
Like, how long did it take? What did you have a figure in mind that you were like, that's what we're working towards, so when we get there, then we move? Like, talk us through the process.
Right. So it was a huge concern. Obviously, I'm walking away from a career that I've been doing for 18, at the time I left, 19 years. And that was stable income, despite, 3 job losses through the 18 years. It was still stable income at that time, right? I had a job, there was employment, there's money coming in. And we said, okay, we have to have a plan on how we're going to have money coming in, right? Because we're not doing this without that. We're not 20 somethings, backpacking across Europe by ourselves. We have 2 children to consider, and, living in hostels isn't really going to work for a family. We've done it on one occasion. We're like, okay, we're desperate, we need someplace to stay, and we made it work, but it wasn't a long-term thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really a core component for us before we could even commit to saying, yes, we want to do this, is how are we going to make money to replace, the income that I was bringing in. And so, we're looking at ways to make money online. My husband went into the internship, and so there's all of this coming in. And we said, okay, yes, we want to do this. We've got the income kind of figured out. What our business isn't where we want it to be, but we've got this idea, and we said, okay, we need a fallback plan. What if our business doesn't ramp up and grow? And so we figured that out, and we said, okay, this is our fallback plan. And then we said, okay, now we just need this pile of money so that, we're not feeling desperate the moment we leave.
Mm-hmm. So
And
had
so
you set that all up? As in, was the money coming in before you left, or was it about to come in?
So it was not coming in before we left. We had, things set in place, and we're like, okay, this is all set up and good to go. And we know we need to do this, and this to kind of get things really moving. And, but as far as money before we left, it was really becoming very much aware of where we were spending money. From the income that I was bringing in, what were we doing with that money? Where was it going? And it really came down to, we didn't set a budget at all. We've never been on a budget, but we got very, very laser focused on being intentional with our money. And so when I say intentional, like really making sure that when we spent money, that it was aligned with what we were really working towards, which was this goal of travel. And so, we made decisions based on, is this going to help us reach our goal of leaving the country, or is this not? And we would approach really every financial decision, going out to eat. Well, we still went out to eat, but we would decide to go to a less expensive restaurant. And so it was really every single decision saying, this goal of leaving the US is our, the utmost priority for us. So how do we make this happen? And how can we make this happen with the money that we have coming in?
Here's the thing, right? A bit of a and I want to ask you on your opinion about this as well, is that when we have quote unquote stable job, whatever that might look like, there tends to be less intention or consciousness around, what you're spending on, because that the paycheck is coming in. So you're like, well, that's fine. Like, I know it's going to appear, and then it goes, and then I replenish it, and it's an automatic system that happens, right? So I know from my own experience as well that I actually spent a lot more money when I had a stable job. I was just like, whoa, get the credit card. Let's just swipe all that up. And, it was easy because it was like, oh, I knew that if I bought, whatever consumer goods I was doing, that it would come back. And so there was that, like, it didn't matter so much as to like, we'll fling it here, we'll put it there. Doesn't matter. It's going to come back. But in your case, what's your opinion on, in terms of money or financial abundance? What's the shift? Like, obviously we have to be intentional, but that shift in terms of, trying to think of the question, like what was different for you?
Right. So Pauline, you hit on something really, really key right there is we do spend so much just habitually, right? You you spend, you take out the debit card, the credit card, whatever it is, and you just spend because you know that the money's going to be there, right? You know that the paycheck's coming in, and you just spend it. And so what happened for us was we really started looking at our finances, like what are we spending on every single month? And do we really need this? And so we didn't take it to the point of not living. We weren't eating rice and beans. We, still enjoyed our life, but we really started to look at where is our money going. And so, one of the big things for us that made a huge difference for us is we had two vehicles, one of which was paid off, and the second of which was less than a year old. And so we were still paying, a monthly car payment, and you're paying extra on the insurance and all of that. And we had this discussion between the two of us because we were making all of our financial decisions together at this point. And we said, is this vehicle really serving our purpose here? Because I was driving the second vehicle and I'm driving it, 5-10 minutes to work, and it's sitting in the work parking lot all day. And then I'm driving it home and it's sitting in the driveway for the rest of the night. And it's like, we looked at it and we're like, man, this really doesn't make sense to continue paying every single month all of this money for something that we know we're going to get rid of because we're leaving the States. We're not going to be keeping this vehicle. And, it was a bit of an emotional decision for me, because for me, that vehicle represented freedom, right? I can go when I choose. I will leave work when I choose. And transitioning to a one vehicle family, you just have to think a little bit more. Right? You have to plan, okay, I need to get to work at this point so that my husband can get home and make sure that the kids get off to school, and he can't pick me up right at this point in time because, this, or this is going on. But we made that decision because we're like, this doesn't make sense. If our goal is really to leave the States, then we need to make decisions that make sense for that. And so for us, looking at that second vehicle, it's like, this doesn't make sense. And so we opted to sell that vehicle and keep all of the money that we were going to spend on the car payment and on the insurance, on the gas, all of that, and just really put that towards our goal of traveling.
And that's a really, great point that you made, in terms of, if you have a goal, it's not about how much you earn, because you can earn quite a lot in your stable job or whatever sources you've got coming in, but it also comes down to how much of that do you keep through intentional spending on the things that actually serve you and your purpose.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, we just looked at that and we said, this goal is more important than my sense of freedom for the few months that we had. I mean, this was probably 4 months left that I had to work, that we were a one vehicle family. Like, it doesn't make sense. This sense of freedom, this emotion that I'm feeling, it's not worth that much.
How did you let go of that though? Because I mean, I've been in a similar boat to you. We've bought like 4 cars together in the first few years together, and realize, oh my God, we don't have any more money. Like, what's happening? But that even for me, like having a car back then, each, me and my husband, it did give me a sense of freedom, because it was something that, like as soon as I could be of age to get my license, I was like, yep, I'm going. And, my vehicle is the avenue for freedom. How did you go through sort of letting go of that emotion for that vehicle?
Yeah, the first time it came up, I'll admit that I was like, I don't want to sell it. I don't want, there was this definite pull towards a sense of freedom. But the more we talked about it, the more I realized that, it really is just a mental thing, that, this emotion is is really in my head, and I can shift, I can take and shift my thoughts from, oh my gosh, I don't have freedom anymore, to, oh my gosh, we're putting a lot of money every month towards our goal. And it was really that mindset shift that allowed me to say, you know what, this is the right thing to do. We need to do this, and we need to do it now. Like, let's go.
Yeah. So pretty much like you saw the benefits outweighed, I guess, the old thoughts that you had, or the attachment to that vehicle or those payments.
Right. And really doing that shift of, how do I speak to myself? What thoughts am I telling myself about this vehicle? Am I sad that it's going away? Am I feeling anxious that I don't have this sense of freedom anymore? Or am I really looking at the positive here and finding the positive, which is, what that goal of leaving is just that much closer because of this decision.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I want to move now to, so getting close to maybe making that move. So now, everything, you've done the intentional spending, you've put the thought process behind it and the plan. Anything happen, I guess, before the move?
Oh, lots happened. So much, because we were renting a house, but we had owned houses before. So we had all this stuff, right? I mean, like, our house was jam-packed full of stuff. And we're like, okay, we're not taking it with us. We're not doing this big move where we put things into a container ship and, ship this whole massive container with us. We're like, no, we're taking, a couple of suitcases and some backpacks, and we're making this happen. So we had to divest ourselves of so much stuff. It was crazy. Like, I never realized how many sets of towels or sheets that we had crammed into our place. And it wasn't just that. I mean, it's the kitchen, it's toys. It was literally everything. And we knew that we were going to keep a small storage unit. There's some heirloom pieces of furniture that I'd gotten from my grandparents that just have much more emotional attachment than value to them. And, there's mementos that we have. There's some special things that we're like, no, we don't want to get rid of this. Mm-hmm. So we knew we wanted to have a small storage unit, but we're like, we're not putting the entire contents of our place into this storage unit. We need to get rid of the vast majority of things. And so we went through this whole process of divesting ourselves of virtually everything. You clear out the linen closet and you're like, okay, we now have one set of towels, until we leave, and just getting rid of all this stuff. And we are very much ecologically minded. And so throwing things in the garbage really doesn't work for us. And so it was like, okay, how do we get rid of this? Who can we, if we can't sell it, we had some garage sales, and we had two, and my husband's like, this is enough. And I'm like, yes, we're good. No more garage sales. Mm-hmm. So we sold some of the bigger stuff online, through like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, some of the furniture and that. But then there's all the little stuff, the sheets and the towels. It's like, who can we give this to that will actually use it? And so it was finding charities that would accept donations, taking things to the Humane Society, the extra towels and that they could use. And even like, we had a ton of craft. I used to be very crafty and do things like that. It's like, okay, what do you do with all this stuff? And well, there was a retirement home, and we're like, let's see if they'll take that. The older folks, they do a lot of craft stuff. And so it was really getting rid of all of this stuff and finding useful places for it, and making sure that, everything that we were keeping would actually fit into the storage unit, and that we weren't just jamming it full of things that we didn't want to make decisions about.
It sounds like a creative process in itself, in terms of the letting go and getting rid of things.
Absolutely. And, I had never heard the term decision overload until after we left, but we were in decision overload. Like, there were times I would look at my husband at, 8:00 at night, and I'd be like, I can't make another decision. Like, I cannot, I have reached my limit of decision making, and I can't make another one tonight. And that's like, okay, we need to take a break. And, we kind of step back and just like relax. Cause it's like, you can't do it forever. Like, there's just there were so many moving pieces, and it was a big deal for us to go from, a normal life to, things that fit into 2 suitcases and 4 backpacks.
Yeah, give people the sense of the magnitude. Like what was the house or the unit, like what were you living in terms of, so that people know how much stuff there might have been in there.
So we had a 3-bedroom house, plus the kids had this massive playroom. So all of their toys and their art stuff was in there, books and games, and just there was so much. It's hard to put a number on it, but it was a decent sized house. The kids both had their own rooms, they had their space, and then the common spaces, and it was a normal house, and so we had a lot of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of things. I'm just marinating in that. Okay, so after being able to make all the decisions and getting rid of all the stuff, you mentioned about the storage unit. I'm curious about this. The storage unit, now, is this something that is like a container that you can just get shipped off to wherever you are, or like is it something that you send overseas? Like what is that?
No, it's literally just a place in Lawrence, Kansas. That's where we were living. And it's a building you go in. We decided that we really wanted a climate controlled facility so that we weren't going to get moldy, our furniture wouldn't mold and whatnot. And so it's just a box really within this building. It's got a door that pulls down, and you just put your stuff in there, and they throw rat poison in every once in a while so that the rats don't come in and eat your stuff.
These were all the things that you're going to keep in Kansas, not move them with you.
Yes. Right.
Okay. Yeah, because you still have family and certain things that you could leave it. Like you knew you were going to come back one day, or what was the plan there?
That's been a big question. Before we left, there's kind of like, oh, I don't know. This was something altogether new for all of us. And the thought was, once my husband and I really got into this, we're like, well, we're not sure when we would want to come back, but there's definitely memento pieces that I was definitely not in an emotional state where I could part with them. And especially with our kids too, they were small still, and it's like, they're attached to things, and so it was hard enough for them to put it in a box and say, okay, this is going into storage. But if we tried to say, what, you have to get rid of this, you have to get rid of these things that are very, very precious to you, emotionally, I think that would have been even like more difficult for them.
Yeah. So it's been able to really be real and like keeping mementos and certain things, but then obviously getting rid of things that you really don't need or use in the future.
Right. Things that are easily replaced. I mean, a set of towels, there's no emotional attachment to a set of towels. They dry your body and you wash them a lot, and that's really it. But when you talk about homemade Christmas ornaments that you've made with the kids, it's like, no, those have memories. You talk about photos, those are memories. And we were pretty pragmatic about getting rid of a lot of things that were like, okay, I haven't looked at this in X number of years, it's okay to get rid of it. But things that really had that emotional attachment to us, we were like, no, we need to hold on to this, because it was already a huge move for us. This was a big change. And so we weren't at the point where we could say, what, we need to just like dump everything.
Yeah. How long did this process go on for? Like just from when your husband decided that he was going to move to Thailand, or having this idea, to the process of letting go, getting rid of things, to actually getting on the flight?
Right. So he left for Thailand in beginning of November of 2018. So he came back right at Christmas time of 2018. And then about February of 2019, we committed to doing this. So we bought our plane tickets. And then the biggest thing for us was we bought our tickets to this family summit. And we're like, we're going to be there. That set our timeline. And so we initially said that I would leave my job in August, and we ended up moving it back, September. I would leave my job in September, and we ended up moving it back to August. And so we had really about 6 months in there where we were actively, planning this and realizing, the timing of things. So obviously, you don't want to go without a dining room table for months and months and months, but you have to get rid of it before you're leaving. And so there was definitely some planning where that went on. And then we don't like cold weather. I grew up in Michigan. It's really cold. And we're like, okay, we are not planning to go anywhere where we need winter clothes. And so we're going to take, minimal amounts of warm clothes. So we needed to wait for kind of winter to be done in Kansas. So, and then we just started saying, okay, we're done with all the sweaters. We're done with all, and I'm still at work. So, it was definitely a process of weeding things out and going through things and finding the right time to get rid of them so that you're not missing them, but you're not waiting to the last minute to get rid of everything.
But 6 months is, that's an intense period. That's not like, it's not a long time.
No, it was intense. Definitely intense.
Okay. And so you had a place already to go in terms of where you were going to move into?
No, absolutely not. We knew we were going to go to Bali.
Yep.
Because that's where the Family Adventure Summit was. And we said, okay, we're just going to kind of wing it. And, we landed there and we had a hotel booked. And we're like, okay, once we, find someplace, or once we land, we'll start actively searching for someplace to live. And we were only going to be in Bali for about 6 weeks. So we weren't super concerned about that. But we just kind of said, okay, we're going to land there and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah. Okay. So there was the option of, I guess it was like you were going to be there for 6 weeks and then go back to Kansas?
No, we were leaving Kansas. So we ended up leaving Kansas in August and spending a month driving out to Las Vegas to where my husband's parents were. And we spent that month going to like as many national parks as we could. We hiked, we camped, really just enjoyed the western part of the US. And then we got on that plane and we said, okay, we're not coming back for who knows how long. And so the plan was we'll go to Bali and then we're going to go to Thailand. And after Thailand, we are open to going wherever.
Yeah.
And so when my husband had been in Thailand in 2018, he had gone to this lantern festival, which was just the most incredible thing. And this kind of still gives me chills when I say this, because he had this thought while he was there that one day I'm going to bring my family here. They have to see this lantern festival someday. And he's thinking, it's 20 years in the future. And we ended up being there the next year in 2019. Yeah. So that was really our plan. We're going to be in Bali for 6 weeks. Then we're going to go to Thailand for 2 months. And after that, we're going to go someplace. Not Kansas.
Yeah. So in terms of your travels ever since that point, how has that life been in terms of, traveling around with family and what went on there?
Yeah. So we really like to travel slowly. We're not, in this great rush to race around the world. We don't have a set time frame. And so for us, our ideal is to spend, 3 to 6 months in a country and really feel like we're part of it, get to know people, the culture, the everything, the food. And, definitely part of that depends on visa status. How long can you stay in a country? Some countries, it's not so easy. And so Thailand, we were kind of knew we were at about 2 months was going to be pushing it. But we really live a pretty normal, I say normal life. People might think that sounds funny, but you travel, but we rent houses, we rent apartments, we feel settled, we go grocery shopping and we cook most of our meals. We have this normalcy, even though we're fairly nomadic.
Yes, because it's not like you're always just moving about. It's like you're there for a certain period of time, so you can get time to settle in.
Yes. And so, you have, normal foods that you eat, as much as you can find them when you're in other countries. We prepare things that are somewhat familiar to us. And that gives us, this sense of familiarity, even though we're in a completely different country, a completely different culture, we still have a lot of the normal family life that we experienced before. We just
Mm.
spend all day with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd have to love to be, I guess, with your family and with your partner as well, like 24/7.
Yes, but
Yeah.
that was really our goal, when we started, was we said we want to spend more time with each other. And for my husband and I both, it was really, really important to us that we create really strong bonds with our children that last into adulthood. We want them to want to spend time with us when they're grown up and adults and married and have kids of their own, you know, and that bond, you have to form it when they're young. You can't wait until they're, 25 and say, oh yeah, I want to have a great relationship with you. It's too
Yes.
late.
Yeah. That's incredibly inspiring, to be able to do that. How many countries, like, have you counted how many countries you've traveled to or been able, since that point?
Well, it's not nearly as many as we would have liked because, we were in Thailand in November and December of 2019. And we were at this point where we didn't know where we were going to go next. We ended up in Vietnam and we went in on a 3-month visa. So expecting to leave in March of 2020. Well, that's when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so we had literally a 12-hour window where we had gotten a heads up from a friend of ours who had traveled to Malaysia, which was our next destination. And she called us up and she's like, they're closing their borders tomorrow at midnight. And she told us this about 10 p.m. the day before, that night. And so we had like 24 hours, well, less than that, because it was one flight. There was literally one flight out of Da Nang, where we were in Vietnam, to Malaysia. And so we had to make a really, really quick decision. Do we stay here and try to extend our visa, which is about to expire in 1 week's time, or do we try to get on a flight and get into Malaysia? And this is a little bit of the stressful part of traveling. I think most people, most of the time you don't experience this, but this is a stressful situation where you have to make a very quick decision. And so we conferred with each other and said, you know what, we like it here. We're enjoying Vietnam, and we're not certain we can even get on that flight. So let's try to extend our visa. So we were able to extend our visa, thankfully. And we ended up being in Vietnam for 18 months. So we went in on a 3-month visa. We're there for 18 months and didn't leave until they said, we're not renewing your visa anymore. So we spent the bulk of the beginning of the pandemic, at least, stuck, if you would, in Vietnam.
Yeah. And then have you managed to move around since then?
So when we left Vietnam, which was just a few months ago now, our options were a little bit limited because we didn't have access to the vaccine in Vietnam. They still have very limited access. They're a developing nation. And so, they don't have the resources of all of the, first world countries, if you would. And so, all of Europe was off limits, really, because we didn't have the vaccine. We weren't looking to go back to the States. And so we said, well, where can we go? And so Mexico was an option for us. And we're like, okay, well, that will at least put us in the same time zone as the US, which is where most of the people that we work with live. And, it's where our family is. So it'll be easier to connect with people. And so we said, well, we've all been missing tacos. Being in Southeast Asia for almost 2 years, we were like, oh, we are really missing some tacos. So let's go to Mexico. And so we've been in Mexico since then. And kind of, being that kind of slow traveling, we decided to go to Mexico City. We had never been. My husband and I had been in both Puerto Vallarta and the Cancun Riviera Maya side, both sides of Mexico, but we'd never been in the central part. So we said, well, let's go and explore there. And so we've been here for almost 3 months now, and we're planning our departure to other parts of Mexico. But there's a couple of things we want to see before we leave. And so we're planning this.
Yeah, no, awesome. And in terms of like where you are at the moment, how do you guys make it work in terms of the work life and the income side of things?
Right. So my husband had initially gone to Thailand to learn about drop shipping. And he learned that we had a store, and we just realized we didn't really feel passionate about it. it was a job really, and it wasn't something that we were really enjoying or really looking forward to doing every day. But we started talking and looking back, and we said, you know what, we made this happen. We were ready to get divorced. We were broke. And then less than a year later, we had 1 year's worth of living expenses saved up, and our marriage was better. And it's like, man, we need to share this with people. And we can feel passionate about this. We can be really excited about
Yeah.
doing this. And to add to that, it was like we wanted to inspire people, because when we had shared our message with friends and coworkers, so many of them responded that, oh my gosh, that's so amazing that you're going after your dreams. I was like, wow, you can go after your dream too. That's what I wanted to tell them. But I'm like, I don't have I didn't have the words for it then. And looking back, we realized that, we had made this happen. We had found our own way. And we're like, we need to share this with people. And so that really was the inspiration behind our business of becoming financial alignment coaches, where we really do work with couples to help them find the ways to make their dreams actually come to fruition, and not just have this, hopefully someday, maybe in retirement, we'll be able to do this thing that we want to do.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess within the financial alignment coaching, what are you guys working on, or, what have you got going on at the moment?
Right. So we work one-on-one with couples. We have a coursework that they do, but we also have one-on-ones with them. And we really take this holistic approach to personal finance. So we don't look just at the bottom line, at the number, because we know that finances are really interwoven into every aspect of our lives, from our career to our parenting to our health and fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, if we just look at the number, we're missing out on so much of what really makes people tick, who they are, really. And so we really look at the whole person. We don't look at just the number. And in doing so, we really get laser focused on what their goals are, so that they really know what they're working towards. Because when you have that goal in mind, you can change that mindset so easily. As we mentioned about the vehicle, right? The vehicle, right? It's the shift in mindset makes like everything different, makes a world so much more positive. And so we really get the laser focus on the goals. And then we find that by combining that goals with getting aligned with your spouse, because my husband and I had not been aligned. We had actually had a similar goal, but we were working on completely different paths before 2018. And so we had never gotten to where we wanted to get to. So we found that, you get laser focused on the goals, and you get the alignment with your spouse, so that you're actually talking about money, you're working towards the same goals. And then the finances really fall into place. And, I say they fall into place and it's easy. And, there's definitely a simplified method that we have that, isn't restrictive. It doesn't feel negative like budgeting typically does for most people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So is it more of a tailored approach, couple by couple, person by person, sort of, as the way that you both work with them?
Absolutely, because we know that everybody is different. And so, if we were a budgeting type of coach, we would just say, okay, well, you're going to put, X percentage towards your housing and X percent towards fooding. And no. It's really, it really is focused on who the couple, who they are, what it is that they want out of life. Some people are foodies, and they, thrive on going out to nice restaurants, and other people couldn't care less about that. So to put a one size fits all, it doesn't really work. And so it really is about, what it is that each individual couple is really focused on, what their goals are and what they want.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Because otherwise, then you end up putting people back in the box.
Exactly.
And that's another one, all size fits approach.
Absolutely. And we're kind of out of the box people now. So we definitely don't want to be putting people into boxes.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, and I guess I like to finish up with a couple of questions. So the first one is, now that you knowing what you know and your experience, what does fulfillment mean to you?
Fulfillment is really about being able to spend the time with the people that I love the most, not being in this job that keeps me away from them. It's really being able to choose activities that light us up. I mean, we are all big nature lovers, and so we choose to spend time, out in nature doing things that really light us up. And that to me really brings so much more fulfillment than, that vehicle that I had to get rid
Mm.
of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Very holistic way of defining it for yourselves. And lastly, imagine that you have traveled the world with your family. You've ticked all the boxes off, um, and you've gotten yourself to a point where you and your husband, like, absolutely, you've been thriving. Kids are happy. Everyone's independent and everyone's got a lot of choice and abundance. But becomes your last day on Earth. What message would you want to send to the world or give to others?
I would really just want to encourage people to go after those dreams that no one knows how long we have here on earth. And so many people wait for retirement to really feel that they're living. And one of my big things is we don't start living when we retire. We need to live, our life now. That, so the statistics are staggering how many people, last a very short period of time after they retire. And so my message would really be to inspire people, to encourage people to go after their dreams, even if they don't have everything lined up, if everything doesn't make sense yet. I mean, we were broke. We were literally at zero. And less than a year later, we were boarding a plane. And so you can make it work. There are ways to think outside of the box, to be creative and make things happen so that you're really living the life that lights you up now, that you're not waiting for 65 and a half or however long that you have to work until you feel you have enough money saved up so that you can have your dream.
Hmm. What an inspiring message. Thank you so much, Karen, for your time. It's been so insightful and so inspiring for me personally. And it's just been, it's been a very fun conversation.
I really enjoyed it, Pauline. Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time, bye.